It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I got this. You hear the guy. You hear the one about the surgeon that learned the new procedure. It was a little controversial. He goes to the patient and he tells the patient who's a little nervous. He needs the new procedure, but he's a little nervous about it. And the surgeon says, "Don't worry about it. Worked all weekend on this." Folks, welcome back to the program. Mr. David Colbert is with us. He is a mental health advocate. David, how you doing this morning, sir?
Paul, I got a cold over the weekend, and I've been fighting off the, what do you call that? Hopefully it's not anything, contagious.
Well,
if it were, I'd go down to the Capitol and find the correct people and get them as close as I could as possible. But
that's actually really good.
How is it going? I went down to the Dome of Emptiness yesterday. Actually, this is their vacation week, sort of, kind of, right? Mm-hmm. Since it's spring break. I wanted to talk this morning. I want to put the brakes on, if you'll allow me to do this, and talk just about what you mentioned a minute ago. Arkansas, this is my home state. I mean, I was born here. I've had so many great experiences here. I never would have had anywhere else. We have to refocus on the importance of looking at mental health in this state, Paul. Everything we talk about that we know is a problem has a connection in mental health at some level. And our state has never, ever done anything but provide very limited lip service to it. If you look at the history of funding, and you look at the inability, in many ways, for mental health to be positioned by the government as an important element of overall public health, my professional experience has tied that directly to the growth of gambling by the government for 20 years. Since 1997, a national crisis has been declared by many people who work in the arena I do, including the faith community, including the professional community, counseling-wise, addiction community, including good government policy foundations all over the United States. And you and I know that the issues around gambling are not liberal and they're not conservative. They are not driven by the politics of election. The bottom line is state lotteries for 20 years have been the fastest, absolutely largest growth vehicle of government at the state level. The addiction is revenue sources to those elected who become a part of a system that allows the constituents and the citizens to be put in the direct harm of their revenue production vehicle in order to offset one thing alone, making the tough decisions about taxes and about placement of budget monies that they don't have to make because they take the gambling money and spread it like a balm across a lot of these problems to make it look like, and I mean this, Paul, look like they have some concern about the folks in the state who are just working so hard and aren't getting a fair shake, and so we're going to cut their taxes. Well, if you cut the taxes on the people already struggling, and you spend millions and millions of dollars for a decade now ingraining them to participate in a state-only operated gambling, I guess I get frustrated because I see this so clearly, and I think you and I agree with this. Personally, we've talked about it. It takes a lot of years and a lot of tough decisions to accept the realities that exist in the gambling part of the government. It is so overwhelmingly wrong and makes so much money that people bury it, and they bury it very effectively. Here in our state, it's been, we're a poster child for this. I'm surprised. I'm hurt, actually. But I believe we'll see some changes. We have to.
You think there's legislation?
Well, these are citizen-driven changes from the outside in.
Do we have
the fact that?
Do we have any legislation? Do we have any legislation that's going to come up before the session ends?
We're going to celebrate the 10th year anniversary of the first piece of legislation being put into, and I'm going to use the word solutions only today. Nothing's been recommended that wasn't absolutely driven by reducing harms. Two simple words. When you know harms exist, and you're in a position, as they are, to protect the public health, you institute best practices that reduce harms. Every one they put in writing in 2009, I'm sitting here looking at them right now, every one they put in writing has been broken on multiple occasions, year after year after year. But as that revenue grew, public oversight in some regard went away completely. Those who are my allies still that have thought this, liberal groups, very conservative groups and others, stepped back somewhat because this administration in particular has kind of a mature lottery, and they'll use it as a wedge, many people do in other states, between unrelated issues. And that cost us money, and it cost us, ultimately, life here in Arkansas. You cannot sit and tell one person that this is why would you pass my piece of legislation, quote unquote, that's pro-life, when you're going to come against my pro-revenue legislation for the lottery? The dynamics imposed here, because again, suicide ultimately is.
How much does mental health problems cost? You know, everyone wants to talk about health care costs. The government's now picking up the health care costs. So mental health has a health care price tag on it, doesn't it?
On a national scale, it's phenomenal. But just at the Arkansas level, 11 years ago, and this is 11 years ago, we did a comprehensive study through DHS, other organizations. I will say this. We have to, and I hate the word study, Paul. Interim study means delay it. We need a study done in the private sector with whatever available funding we have from the state and from other resources in the private industry. How do we know what to do with healthcare if we don't genuinely know where we have these problems? And I'm going to make a direct correlation to mental health. In the last legitimate measurement of Arkansas's mental health services delivery capability, we stand 47th in America. And yet in other categories that we know are attached to the impact of untreated mental health, we stand in the top 5.
Wasn't Arkansas's big contractor on mental health that Preferred Family Healthcare outfit? Am I wrong there?
This has hurt the whole process, Paul. What we've got is and I said this last night, these are just people I encounter every day. You've known me long enough to know that, and you know this, Paul, out here in the actual world that has to function differently than this legislative body in particular, these needs are recognized. People admittedly say, the corruption cases that are so dominating our state in particular has had an impact on legislators being willing to go in that arena because of them, because they were, in fact, focused on mental health providers. So combine that with a lack of services and a high impact of untreated, and we have at least, I'm going to say a decade-long situation where what little health care we had available for mental health in Arkansas had already been put together in a system that the result was not outcome-based, period. The result of that entire process was how much is who going to make off of pricing in particular, which for the money, even a person in the private sector likely could have delivered a 4-to-1 margin of services. There was some, going to the guts of what we paid as a state for many of these contract services, we need to look inside our own borders. We need to understand that we have I'll break something, follow me please. Let's look at the lottery as a resource for mental health services. Let's look at that revenue that we say, quote unquote, is for the kids being dedicated to mental health services at the local community level. We can take a percent of that money.
You mentioned that there's all these regulations trying to regulate gambling in this state, and
well, there are none, Paul.
Okay. Well, then what were you talking about earlier from 2009?
The 2008 study. The 2008 study, by the way, was about $1.9 to $2.1 billion a year in the state of Arkansas. We were losing directly to mental health.
So I guess I want to know is, I know they've used kids in advertisements with no consequences. Tell us about that.
Well, but television is the dominant tool of marketing for all state lotteries. They, in fact, dominate not only the actual schedules. I'll go back to this. I was, again, blessed to work in a lot of areas, politics and the media, in particular, network television. At that time, we didn't have gambling. We had casinos. And here in Little Rock, we would get budgets from Oklahoma and from Louisiana, from casinos. And Oakland, of course, and our friends at Southland. But when we look at the lottery as a part or component of gambling in Arkansas, they are dominantly the largest, will remain the largest, have grown the fastest, and have less accountability to the public than the private providers do. They cannot lead by example at all. They, in fact, for reasons I still don't quite understand, wrote their own rules out in the beginning in 2009. They're called best practices. And right there at the top of the list is minors will not be used in lottery. I put gambling behind lottery whenever I say it, in lottery gambling commercials or promotions. They did it almost immediately with product placement in the retail environment.
Okay, so they're violating
kids on TV.
Their own standards. They're violating their own standards, right?
They're violating what are actually international standards. Now imagine this, Paul. Lotteries are an international, really restricted business. They are run operationally by a handful of international companies. Ours is run out of the state of Arkansas by a company that has no ties to the state of Arkansas because they're located in the United Kingdom. That alone should have stopped this process, and the legislators should have taken a long look at the direction that this thing had headed. The governor saw fit, Governor Hutchinson, to take it in-house. At that point, myself, the National Council on Problem Gambling, Arkansas, every group that I've ever worked with, pretty much knew that it would become so hidden within the guts of the revenue, it would become a revenue vehicle, period. There would be no discussion of public health impact. We would have an aggressive model of marketing that, again, would include product placement in a family-friendly retail environment of gambling machines, which today, Paul, if you look at them everywhere, we knew that those lottery vending terminal machines, lottery vending ticket machines, were an abysmal failure in South Carolina because of underage gambling. And the director from South Carolina came to Arkansas. If you look at our state and the advantage that's been taken here over every citizen, is the fact that we woke up and we were in a great position to only have 2 casinos in our borders. No one can justify the use of gambling as a sustainable vehicle for government revenue production since 1964. So I've got this huge animal that literally jumps over this huge wall that we built, and it was effective, keeping out gambling providers who wanted to come in here and take advantage of one thing, Paul. Arkansas has a huge foundation of unfortunate tax laws that have put us in a position to sustain poverty in this state. And what drives lottery gambling are poor people, not people that are buying a ticket for any purpose good. They're trying to make a living working. And I tell you, the working poor in our state are good people. I'm with them every day. They don't quite comprehend at this point how we can change this lottery. Not them. We. Us. This thing's owned lock, stock, and barrel despite of DF&A taking it. In spite of this group changing the whole structure of this lottery. Ultimately, the bottom line is any agency in the state of Arkansas that provides an age-restricted product that is medically defined as an addiction, first and foremost, has the responsibility of protecting the public health. They have failed at that, continue to fail at it, rejected solution, legislative act after solution. My belief in my heart and my gut is there's nowhere left for them to stand and defend the fact they took all services 5 years ago, and during that time, we jumped in suicide rates 5 spots without a hotline for the addiction that has the highest rates of suicide. 1 out of 5 gambling addicts takes their own life. A simpleton in math can look at the fact that since the lottery started, we've done nothing to address gambling addiction. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Nothing.
So it's something that's unchecked. Now, we're running out of time, David. I want to make sure I get to this. We're talking with David Colbert. He's a mental health advocate. He definitely knows a lot about gambling in the state of Arkansas. Now, David, you have brought some of these, violations to some people's attention. For example, let's say you have. I would imagine that the advertisements that are purchased on a lot of TV. They do a lot of TV. That's a lot of money for some of these, TV stations. So
they said $5 billion a year was too little of a TV budget. $5 billion was too small of a budget.
So if they're using an advertisement, running an advertisement with kids, in it, and they'll probably say, well, it's for the scholarship lottery. That's for kids. But I mean, they're not. I'm assuming the TV stations, they're not going to rock the boat, right? They like this revenue stream.
Unfortunate but true, yes. If you note, think about this, Paul. Have we seen a negative story about the lottery since Ernie Passelet got run out of the state? No, we hadn't. They dominate the news with 2 things. Number 1 is free money. I mean, what form of welfare to the ad community do you have better than a state lottery? It's free money. It's so dominant that within the words of the actual enabling language, ingrain was used. Their goal is to ingrain lottery gambling into the very culture of Arkansas. And they've done a pretty darn good job of it so far. Addiction. And when the government is the only, I'll use the word dealer, they don't use the product that I'm aware of, Paul. If you went through our body there at the Capitol and said, are you going to spend $1,400 next year on lottery tickets? You wouldn't get a one to tell you they are. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, again, bills will be introduced, and they are being introduced, and I'm headed that way as soon as we get off the phone, that have been introduced multiple times. I'll give you a letter from the National Council where Keith White says, it's our understanding $250,000 will be reinstated immediately when they cut that budget, and then we'll look at a plan that will effectively address problem gambling for blah, blah, blah. Paul, that happened 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. You don't follow up with a problem like we've had for a decade, you cannot ever say the end result won't be increased major problems. And go again to the Delta. I was with a gentleman who used to be a state senator from there yesterday for a long. He lives in Lee County. How in the world would the most impoverished counties flip up to the top 5 in scratch-off ticket sales? What drives those people who you and I know already probably most experience problems with alcohol or with drugs? Their communities already have crime. And then we put something like a lottery on top of them at retailers that are dominant, if you look at our state, in areas where the income levels match their heaviest players. This is all a plan that's been used, and I want people to see that lotteries, with an S, very much operate in a tremendously similar way. So we fall and prey as a state, and our legislature has become addicted to a revenue stream that doesn't look at public health impact. And that's going to change because the focus of these bills is mental health. The focus of funding is addictions, all addictions. We are first in untreated, undiagnosed, chronic mental illness in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. It's about gambling, brother. Again, revenue. Do we need revenue? Absolutely. Is it there? Yeah. Is it growing? Yes. The focus of the dedicated monies will be toward local community mental health services to make sure we include in the component of prevention, education, problem gambling. Gambling is a defined addiction.
David Colbert, I appreciate it, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, Paul, I thank you so much for talking, and we'll get together soon.
Okay, all right.
Appreciate it, David. Have a great one.
I'm sure I'll see David here later on in the day. I'll probably post up on around a column or something and talk to David some more. He's always great to have on, and I just love his wealth of knowledge. I mean, it is immense. You can just tell from talking to him.